Welcome back, everybody, to your daily update on the state of the Malazan Empire. And yes, there was no daily update yesterday because I had something else. And I'm really still very much humbled and honored that Stephen Erickson and the Critical Dragon AP Canavan both decided to talk to me or agreed to talk to me about a lot of stuff, and that interview went up yesterday, so I feel I'm sort of excused for not posting a daily update yesterday. Anyway, so here we are today. This is going to be rather quick because I just found out I have to write a press release real quick as well about a band that I'm going to, share the cover artwork and track list for the album later tonight, and so we need to have all that stuff ready. And so if American Doom Metal all about Gandalf and nothing else but Gandalf and more Gandalf is your thing, then that might just actually be something for you as well. But since I need to be a bit more creative to write that, I figured drinking a beer is a good idea. And then I realized that's the perfect time to record this video, so I can, hit two storm crows with one stone. And that's what we're going to do here. I'm going to talk about the first two chapters of Book 3, Shadows of the King, I think? Is that one? Yes, of the Bonehunters. And there's a lot going on there. So let's get this started. Cheers. That works. Good. So we are in the next book, and after these really hard hits at the end of generally hard hits in book 2 of the Bonehunters, with the whole Igatan debacle and then the Tillana Mass attack on Solara, Qatar, Heboric, and so forth. Yeah, we are now in the part where people are sort of regrouping and trying to actually deal with all this loss and trying to survive and stuff like that. Now, there's one thing that I'm and this is me doing really no research and being dumb, most likely. But how many unbound / broken Tillana Mass were there, right? At the beginning of House of Chains, are those 6 or are those 7? Because when I go through House of Chains, Karsak kills 1, right? He kills the unfound. Which one that? Sibal? I think Sibal is the one. Yes. Sibal the Unfound. That's the one he kills and throws into the lake at the end of House of Chains, right? Into Raraku Sea. If I fully remember that bit. And for whatever reason, I always thought there were 7 Tillana Mass. So did another one die and I kind of missed it or forgot about it again? Because there's only 5 of them doing during the attack on Solara and Heboric and so forth, and I'm wondering what happened to that 6th Tillana Mass. Did I miss something? Did it get killed and I forgot about it? Or were there 6 to start with and I'm just an idiot and because I'm so, ingrained in magical numbers magic, I thought they have to be 7 because 7 is such a more powerful mystical number and not so it has to be 7. I'm still not sure. Maybe someone knows and can actually enlighten me here. I do appreciate enlightenment sometimes. Well, most of the times I do appreciate the enlightenment. So yes, there's definitely that. We learn a lot, more backstory stuff in here, a ton more backstory weird stuff. About Barathol, who apparently was involved in the whole debacle in Arran. You remember the Tillana Mass slaughtered everyone in Arran. Apparently there was a rebellion in the name of Barathol, Mekar, who has an interesting second name, last name there. I think it's still not officially revealed if he has any familial ties to everyone's favorite assassin. And in case, I mean, only your favorite assassin if Tillana Mass is your favorite assassin. Should that be someone else, then yeah. Chances of the relationship are even smaller. Anyway, that whole scene is interesting. Lauric shows up. Lauric actually, for the first time in the entire story, actually takes a stand when he decides to attack, to judge Barathol, which I found interesting because compared to like all the other stuff that happens to Lauric before, where he's always super passive and doesn't really actually want to do anything, he finally actually does something, and it's dumb. And now the question is all of that, does he decide to actually act for once and not be passive? Is that because he's just so fucking tired and stressed out with all the other stuff that happened before? Or is he finally, realizing that he has to do stuff? I don't know. We'll keep an eye on that, I feel. But in general, yes, that was some of the more interesting bits there. We find out that Felicin Younger is now Felicin or Shaik Reborn. So Felicin Older wasn't even the rebirth that was promised, and this is like also a very likely choice, a very likely option here, one that I feel is more in keeping with the whole way the Malazan universe works. People are manipulating an old legend because prophecies can be used, right? That's something that we all know already. But prophecies can be used, and in this case, maybe the crippled god has decided to use the prophecy of Shaik being reborn by taking Felicin Younger and putting her in place of Shaik, basically. By reinterpreting and reforging the myth, that legend, that prophecy, that bit of religion or faith. Because obviously we know that the actual goddess Drijna, whatever you want to call her, that goddess is dead. So maybe the crippled god is trying to usurp the legend, basically the mythology there, by putting his power behind it instead of the goddess power to just, try to claim that bit of legend with all the power that it has within the within 7 cities. Now that's an interesting idea to look at. Also, the idea that these people have to be broken and scarred in some way, and that was the part of why Polio, the goddess of disease, came down into 7 cities to actually scar people. Now, there's a thing, I'm not sure if I said that before, because I've had it in like mind for a long time. I may have said it in my Memories of Ice video, but I'm gonna drop it again because it makes me feel smart, and I like to feel smart. I like the name Polio because it really both reminds me of polio, the sickness, and of pollution, which is where the way that for a long time in antiquity and so forth, people thought of sickness as a pollution, and pollution being equivalent to sickness, diverse sicknesses. So having her called Poliel is a very nice way to deal with words there that evokes something. Now we also know that her sister goddess, the goddess of healing, is called Soliel, which both has that similar ring to Poliel, but also has that similar ring to something like Solace. So yeah, well, good for you, Mr. Erickson or Mr. Esselmont, whoever came up with those names. That is just good name finding right there. And compared to some other names that I've found in fantasy stories over the decades, I am happy this one actually works well for me. Mostly for me, I guess. All All right. So let's look at something more that I found very interesting. The trip or not yet trip of, like part of the trip of Karsa Orlong and Samar Dev and their interactions with the Anibar, who have met Iskar Jarak, the Iron Prophet. First of all, why is there not yet a heavy metal band out there called Iron Prophet? Something went severely wrong there, so I don't know, maybe I'll start one. Anyway, that's not what I was looking for, where I was planning to go, but no, like the thing that I found very interesting there is the discussion about the different traditions or rules of conduct or whatever you have, rules within Anibar society. I found a few things there very interesting, and worth pointing out. So on the first one there is like, I mean, the Anibar are one of these, like, their rights, their traditions, their society is portrayed in a way that is very reminiscent of a lot of semi-nomadic people in real world history. And we know that that's something that we find a lot within the Malazian Book of the Fallen, which is cool. And there's two things that stuck out for me there that I feel are important to look at as a jumping off point for more thoughts about all kinds of things. Now, one is the discussion about how they gather their everyone gathers their harvest, and they all put all of that together and then divide it by who needs how much. And the other one is the exchange of gifts because of their symbolic meaning and not like a monetary value, like the symbolic value versus their monetary value, which is also a very important thing there. But first, let's look at the gathering of harvest. So apparently, the Anibar are a semi-nomadic tribe that has their winter camps, and they have their summer camps, or whatever, where they go down to the almost grasslands to kill Bedouin and so forth, and then they go back home. They also do, I mean, it's not fully like actually a full-on agrarian society, because it looks like they're just gathering some kind of crop. It's not exactly, so far not exactly explained what it is, but they do have some plants they gather. And the realization that depending on all kinds of outside influences, harvests may be better or worse depending on which exact place your band of Anibar has wandered this year. And that is nothing that has anything to do with your skill at harvesting or whatever. Nothing that your group is to be blamed for, because it's outside influences that are in play here. The realization that for survival or like prosperity of the overall Anibar, it's much better to actually share all of these things. That's an interesting comment on our way of looking at economy there, at any form of economy, right? It's the whole equality of outcome versus equality of chances or whatever kind of thing there. Because what we realized is there is no equality of chances when what you do is influenced by all these outside phenomena that no one has any power over, like whether it's a dry summer on one part or a wet summer or whatever, whether the water like rises to this level or that level. It's an interesting discussion that that a boat finder has there with Samar Dev mostly. And for the overall prosperity of society, it's better to share those gains, to share the harvest, to share the meat and all that stuff in the way that everyone has enough, and not, sit back and be proud about stuff that mostly you earned, you got because of outside influences that you had no actual power over, than the other way around. which may come from the fact that this is a barter society, or not even a barter society, that has literally doesn't attach fictional monetary value to things, but just values them for their symbolic meanings, or their actual physical meaning in the way of I need so much food to survive, right? That is an interesting aspect there. The next one, yeah, I mean, I don't know if I should say too much about where I stand on that concept. It's obviously not applicable, like one-to-one applicable to everyday life in our society, because our society is a bit more complex in that regard. But it's definitely something to look at and see the value in that kind of thing. So, social welfare or whatever welfare has a lot of advantages for a society as a whole. That is just something that, you can kind of see from this very basic example that I feel is rooted in real world traditions with certain people as well. So there's that bit. The other bit there is the one about the symbolic meaning versus a monetary meaning of things. Now, this one is sort of interesting in a lot of ways because it's a quick parallel of that whole, like, I don't even know how true these actually are because I have not done the research, but there's this, I don't want to call it an urban legend because it might just be fact or not, this popular story of European explorers, conquerors, exploiters sounds better than explorers, but you know what I mean. European people coming with their more or less important goods like glass beads and mirrors and stuff to continents that had like America, something, or partly to Africa, and exchanging those that are monetarily worthless for people or not worthless, but have a very limited monetary worth value in European society, and exchanging them with people that have with either slaves or land or whatever, that they then sell on to because those things have a much higher monetary value in their society. And as I said, there's like stories about that I have not proved, checked the actual sources, whether those are like more myths than anything. You you see a very cool subversion of that story in the you remember in that one Futurama episode when they're on Mars, and the when it's about those buffalo beetle kind of things, bugalows. They're bugalows, right? The inside of Mars. Anyway, that story, put that story aside, but that's the one side that we see of that. But the other thing that you can take from that is kind of the idea of different types of capital that you see in the theories of someone like Bourdieu, mostly Bourdieu. The idea of capital, there being different capitals that you can exchange for different things. There's symbolic capital, there's monetary capital, there's educational capital. There's these different types of capital, and that an exchange between the two. Like if you're trying to exchange one kind of capital for another one, then that can lead to really big problems. There's even an analysis that tries to explain the conflict of the Peloponnesian War between the more Doric, Peloponnesian, Spartan alliance on the one hand and the Attic Sea Alliance Empire almost as a conflict between societies that were built and founded on different types of capital in a way. There is, as I said, there is that in there as well. And we just see that explained in a very simple way here in that small discussion about what when Boatfinder offers the that boner. Is it a boner bone? Anyway, when he offers that to Karsa Orlong in exchange for Karsa going and killing all these their enemies. And Samar Dev is like, yeah, I suspect you lose out big time in your trades with the people from the cities, which because they exchange goods based on their monetary value, their monetary capital, and the Anibar exchange goods on basis of symbolic value, which is a wholly different capital in a way. So yeah, I don't know. Go read Bourdieu. It's a French philosophy, but it's not as terrible to read as is Foucault, which you should also read, but it's more stressful to actually deal with that. Anyway, so I found those two aspects in that small bit about the Anibar. I found that just a one of those small bits where I sit down and like, okay, I can connect it to so many different things. So yeah, that was a thing that I wanted to mention. Okay, what else? Um, yes, let's talk about the whole um, Deregoth hunting Hounds of Shadow, hunting the Trollbarral, um, or thing, and let's talk about the long story about the Azath. That's those two things I feel are very important. We get a lot of info here. Like on the one hand, we see that rather complex scheme of Ganoas Paran coming off rather well with the Hounds of Shadow and the Deregoth. With the Hounds of Shadow knowing where the Trollbarral is, and the Deregoth following the Hounds of Shadow. So the Hounds of Shadow leads the Deregoth to the to the Trollbarral, to Dejim Nebral, and then one Hound of Shadow takes the last surviving Trollbarral to lead everyone else, including like to lead the Deregoth somewhere else. Now here's an interesting thing to look at, because you remember that the Hounds of Shadow are basically the shadow beings, the shadows of the Daregoth, whom you might see as the Hounds of Shadow, Hounds of Darkness, but who also seem to be the diverse or whatever souls of Decembelakis, that emperor. That's still like a thing that I have like no idea about, and there's a lot to look at there at some point in a speculative discussion with someone who actually knows lore. But this idea of the Hounds of Shadow as beings being the shadow, so in a way a lesser reflection or something of that bigger, more archetypal monster hound, the Hound of Darkness, the Deregoth. Once again, that's a very platonic idea of like this ideal form and these reflections that weaken in a way or whatever, but they've also apparently become more subtle, right? The Deregoth are obviously more powerful, more brutal, or whatever. But Shadow is more flexible, is more fluid in a way, by losing maybe a bit of that essence, this essential thing that makes the Deregoth the real thing, the real form, and the other one's not just a shadow. But apparently that kind of helps. Also, Shadowthorn might help. But that kind of helps to build that idea that the Hounds of Shadow are able to lead the Hounds of Darkness somewhere. So the question is, who's tricking who in this like whole chase scene thing there? So yeah, there's that. Just like once again, just one of those small things that popped into my head there. We also saw that situation that apparently the goddess Polio is literally on the mortal plane, on the human world, in that temple, and Ganoas Paran with a rather ridiculous scene. I mean, this is pure comedy, right? He walks in there, he gets he gets taken for a deserter, grabbed, then just fights everyone off because he's a badass, and then realizes that he's punched once again, gotten on the wrong side of of a princess after his whole start with when he starts in Garden of the Moon, when he just rides into the throne room of the Empress. You know, that was a lot of fun, but we also see apparently there's that whole situation has become really brutal because apparently the goddess is down there and someone needs to deal with her, and so far no one was able. We'll see how that continues really soon, and there's going to be some interesting discussions on that, I suspect, in the future. Yes, but I wanted to talk about a bit about the whole Azath thing, and I still don't fully understand Azath. I feel that the idea of emergency, not emergency, but emergence, is something that might help us understand the Azath, but it apparently doesn't work. We'll see. Like, the idea is that the Azath are the structure on the whole chaos, and they're kind of falling apart, and the nameless ones, being idiots, decide to use use Icarium to kill people and destroy something that they perceive as endangering the Azath. Now, what that might be is a question that I have no answer for right now. But at least that discussion that Cotillion and Mappo have, and Mappo decides to actually, the idea that Mappo, now this is the other part, like, so Cotillion tells Mappo there might be a chance to actually save and heal Icarium. And once again, like, Mappo is a character I just very, very much, I feel for, poor bastard, all the time. And him having that hope and deciding to actually continue on that quest to follow Icarium and find a chance, a way to help him. And when you contrast that, with the scenes with Icarium and Terra like V, that's also like a very, like, this is super emotional. This hurts a lot. At least I feel it hurts a lot. Now, there was another thing that I wanted to talk about, and I can't fully remember, so I might actually wait until next chapter or 2 chapters, because then I hopefully remember what it fully was. We'll see. But I feel that's sort of what I wanted to talk about, those 2 like early chapters of book 3. I'll see how much I get done by tomorrow and talk to you about that then. I have like another conversation that I had with the High Fist that I still need to upload, and I have another video about a completely different book that I want to talk about on the side. So there's more stuff coming. Until then, I'll better write about Olorin and their amazing new album and all that stuff now, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. Until then, have a great Tuesday. God's time in this fucking lockdown is not very stable. Anyway, have a great evening. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Until then, cheers.